wherever you may be, and welcome to today's event, a nuclear security country update about Türkiye's increasing nuclear security responsibilities as it inaugurates its first nuclear power plant. I'm Christina McAllister, Director of the Stimson Center's International Nuclear Security Forum, and I'm delighted to introduce our featured speaker for today's event, Ali Alkış, who authored the issue brief that is the subject of today's discussion, called Nuclear Security for Nuclear Newcomers, Exploring Türkiye's Readiness. Ali is the World Institute for Nuclear Security's ambassador to Turkey and a PhD candidate. He is a member of Gender Champions in Nuclear Policy and is the gender champion at the Odessa Center for Nonproliferation. In addition, Ali is one of the emerging leaders of the Nuclear Threat Initiative's Global Dialogue on Nuclear Security Priorities and a member of the Black Sea Women in Nuclear Network. Previously, he was a nuclear scholar in the UK's Nuclear Security Culture program implemented by King's College London. His research interests are nuclear security, nonproliferation, and nuclear terrorism, as well as Turkish nuclear and foreign policies. He is an active contributor to the nuclear security community, promoting collaboration via knowledge sharing, participating in various nuclear security-related workshops and events, and publishing in national, regional, and international forums. In addition to his various articles, book chapters, interviews, and op-eds, you can find Ali on social media, where he regularly posts on nuclear security topics through his publicly available accounts. Ali, thanks for being with us today to talk about your latest piece and Turkey's new nuclear chapter. Please go ahead. Ali, are you there? Great, we can see you. Do you want to share we're ready for you to share your slides when you're able. I think there may be a sound issue. Ali, are you able to hear us? All right, just wait for the technical issues to be resolved, and then we'll continue.
Hello?
Great, we can hear you now, Ali. Please go ahead. Go ahead and share your
Sorry
slides.
for the problem. There was a connection problem on my end. Apologies.
Please.
And thank you, Christina, for your kind words, and thank you for the Stimson Center for having me here. It's really a nice opportunity and great privilege to be here. Now, today, we will be exploring more about Turkey and how Turkey is getting ready for its first nuclear power plant and how it implements nuclear security measures. In April this year, Turkey inaugurated its first ever nuclear power plant as a result of 6-decade-long quest to achieve nuclear energy. And it comes at a highly symbolic time, the 100th anniversary of the Republic of Turkey. Having such a symbolic importance, nuclear energy will not only contribute to energy demands, but also launch the country into a nuclear power lake. Still, establishing a nuclear power plant brings risks as well as benefits. Ankara has been fighting terrorism for decades and is located in a region that is a transit route for nuclear. Furthermore, Turkey shares borders with two conflict zones in Iraq and Syria. In this context, the scope of this presentation gives more information about the Turkish nuclear security approach. As I mentioned earlier, Turkey's quest for nuclear energy can be traced back to the late 50s, with the motivation for economic growth and energy security. In addition, nuclear energy has been perceived as a symbol of modern Türkiye. Despite this desire, Ankara has made several attempts over the last 6 decades to introduce nuclear energy, all met with failure until recently. When we look at the initial attempts, during the 60s, Ankara's financial capabilities were insufficient to support the costs associated with hosting a nuclear power plant. Consequent initial plans were postponed due to the military coups in 71 and 80, with subsequent political and economic instability. In the 80s, Turkey adopted a new strategy based on build, operate, and transfer financial model. Nevertheless, the attempt again failed due to the combination of different factors, including 100% of foreign financing, the Chernobyl disaster, and international opposition due to the suspicion of Turkish companies allegedly associated with Pakistani nuclear program. Then, in 1994, Turkey issued a new tender for a turnkey project that was delayed several times and was eventually abandoned. For the fifth attempt in 2002, Turkey issued a new international tender. For the first time, the motivation was partly due to the concerns over dependence on Russian gas. Nevertheless, the tender received only one bid, which was from Rosatom. After 5 failed attempts, Turkey shifted its strategy toward build, own, and operate model in 2008. As a result, in 2010, Turkey and Russia signed an intergovernmental agreement for establishing a nuclear power plant. As a part of the agreement, Rosatom is authorized to build, own, and operate Akkuyu for 60 years of service life with a possible 20-year extension, and will also be responsible for its eventual decommissioning. Rosatom will also supply the fuel and manage the waste generated while helping Ankara build the necessary human capital. In return, Turkey provided Akkuyu site free of charge and has committed to buy electricity generated for 15 years at a fixed rate. In general, it could be stated that Akkuyu nuclear power plant project is an economically well-negotiated agreement. However, there are many other key aspects to consider while building a nuclear power plant. Most importantly, nuclear security. When we look at Turkish nuclear security approach, it is seen that Turkey continues its efforts for international rules and norms, as well as enhancing its domestic legislation to demonstrate its commitment to nuclear security, which is also reflected in the NTI's Nuclear Security Index, where Turkey increased its score for support for global efforts by 20 points. The case of combating terrorism has raised Turkish awareness of the quintessential need to establish, implement, and sustain a sophisticated national nuclear security regime beyond its conventional security strategies. In this context, Ankara attaches great importance to effective nuclear security governance, measures for physical security, cybersecurity, and protection from insider threats, development of a design-based threat documents, and learning from the international guidance and accepted best practices. In this context, Turkey promotes the implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 1540 and regularly reports to the Committee on Domestic Implementation. In addition, Turkey is a state party to Convention on the Physical Protection of Nuclear Material and its 2005 amendment. Turkey is also a state party to International Convention for the Suppression of Acts of Nuclear Terrorism, generally known as the Nuclear Terrorism Convention. Besides these legal commitments, Ankara is also committed to voluntary actions supporting global nuclear security norms. For example, Turkey has been an active member of the Global Initiative to Combat Nuclear Terrorism since becoming one of the 13 founder states in 2006. However, the initiative has suspended all its activities after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Additionally, Ankara participates in IAEA Incident and Trafficking Database and Nuclear Security Guidance Committee. In the same vein, Turkey is an eager member of IAEA regarding nuclear security. In this context, IAEA conducted 2 IPES missions in 2003 and 2021. As a result of the latest mission, IAEA reported the existence of a national nuclear security regime based on essential elements of IAEA's fundamental nuclear security guidance. While the IAEA identified some good practices as examples to other member states, the organization also provided an undisclosed report of recommendations and suggestions for Turkey. As a part of its commitment, Turkey subscribed to IAEA Information Circular 869 in 2014 to strengthen its national nuclear security regime by implementing existing non-binding IAEA guidelines and taking more actions to improve security. Turkey was among the first 35 states to subscribe to this document during the Nuclear Security Summit 2014. On the other hand, Turkish commitment to global norms is reflected in its domestic policies. For example, in 2018, Turkey established the Nuclear Regulatory Authority (NDK) to improve its nuclear regulatory system. NDK is the sole and independent authority for nuclear security, safety, and safeguards, as well as radiation safety, protection, and other relevant topics in Turkey. Since its establishment, NDK has been working extensively to revise and update several regulations. Ankara has been also revising and updating its domestic legislation and practices to bring them into line with the provisions of international commitments. Additionally, training activities have been conducted regularly regarding the inspection and physical protection of nuclear facilities and materials. Still, Ankara's commitment to nuclear security stems not only from Turkey's adherence to international norms, but also from the risk environment in and around Turkish borders. As a state that has been fighting against domestic and international terrorism for nearly 4 decades, Turkey is well positioned to develop a strong security culture for its nuclear power plant. This is also indicated in its score for domestic commitments and capacity category in the NTI's Nuclear Security Index, in which Turkey scored 100. As a result, this preemptive approach to nuclear security offers an advantage for Turkey to integrate physical protection of nuclear materials into the existing security approach, as Turkish institutions, organizations, and authorities have long-standing experience in coordinating inter-organizational efforts to prevent security incidents or otherwise manage security crises. Based on different assessment, the threats posed by terrorism and proxy war scenarios may be the most probable for Turkey to consider. First, regional state-sponsored terrorism and proxy wars are regular and deniable hostile activities. In addition, terrorism and proxy war may seem comparatively cost-effective methods for geopolitical competition. Lastly, the region hosts many terrorist organizations and violent non-state actors in and around Turkish borders, including various separatist and religious terrorist groups such as PKK, Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, and ISIS. These non-state actors might be interested in terrorist attacks against nuclear facilities for causing financial, psychological, and environmental damage to Turkey, as well as theft, given their interest in WMD capabilities. Despite this risk environment, Turkey has performed significantly in its nuclear security approach and increased its NTI index score by 20 points, moving up from 50 to 70 by improving its commitments to global norms, domestic legislature, and capabilities. Still, Turkey might have to overcome some other challenges, including the fact that Ankara will have indirect control on Akkuyu through the regulator. Rosatom might focus on financial concerns rather than investing continuously in nuclear security measures, as construction is already behind the schedule. This concern is not necessarily unique to the build, own and operate model. Still, in this case, a Russian company owns 100% of the MPP and shoulders all the financial risks and burdens, which might result in a reluctance to take timely and proactive nuclear security measures. Another challenge is to draft a DBT document for the Akkuyu, which requires Turkish authorities to share extensive intelligence analysis with Rosatom, in other words, with Moscow. There are still important intelligence and military clashes between Ankara and Moscow on critical issues, including supporting opposing warring parties in Syria, Libya, and Nagorno-Karabakh. In addition, Turkey has yet to gain experience in civilian nuclear power regulation. Rosatom, as the operator, might therefore also provide inputs to the authorities developing DBT. These inputs could be influenced by financial or political concerns regarding the security measures, resulting in a less holistic and comprehensive security measures. One other challenge is the process for vetting the personnel working at the site, who are likely to include Russian staff. It is reported that nearly 4,000 people will work at Akkuyu when it is fully functional. However, Turkey will still lack ability to check and verify information provided by Russian counterparts regarding the Russian personnel working on the site. Finally, Ankara should ensure that the Nuclear Regulatory Authority is free from any political pressure regarding its mandate to inspect and, if necessary, sanction the operator, including suspending or even revoking the license in case of non-compliance. In this context, how Akkuyu is managed and secured should not be influenced by politics. While Turkey is getting ready for the first nuclear power plant with a strong commitment to nuclear security, both at domestic and global levels, it also demonstrates how a transition to nuclear energy should be well integrated into policies and practices, considering not only nuclear safety and safeguards, but also nuclear security. As a cost-effective, low-carbon and reliable energy source, nuclear energy will play a key role for Turkey and possibly for many other states that have plans for nuclear energy in the future. As a result, there will be a greater need for a robust international nuclear security approach, as failure in nuclear security measures may lead to nuclear incidents with radiological consequences beyond national borders. Thus, this counter-update has demonstrated that Turkey has a long history of pursuing nuclear energy while integrating nuclear security measures step by step, even before its first operational nuclear power plant. I know introducing Turkish nuclear security approach may not necessarily be a universal model for holistic nuclear security understanding in similar or prospective newcomer states, but it might provide valuable insights to them. Thank you for your attention. I will be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Ali, for that fascinating presentation. For all those who have not yet had a chance to read your issue brief, I think this was a really great overview. I learned a lot from your paper, and I do encourage everyone to read the whole piece on our website, and I believe the link is in the chat for those who are online. We will turn to questions from the audience shortly. While those are collecting, I'm going to claim moderator's privilege to ask you a little bit more about Turkey's future plans for nuclear energy and this, whatever insights you might have into plans for small modular reactors, new power plant projects, and ongoing negotiations with Korea Electric Power Company, U.S. companies, or Rosatom. Any insights? We're really glad to hear any insights you have there, Ali. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina, and thanks for the kind words. For the future plans, in Turkey there are possibility of new traditional nuclear power plants in addition to the SMRs. There are projects for two other sites which has been selected. One is Sinop and one other is in the Tekirdağ region in the European side of Turkey. For the Sinop project, there has been a tender and Japanese-French consortium actually took the tender. I mean, they were supposed to start construction. However, after the Fukushima incident, because of the new safety requirements, they needed to update the financial side of the plans project. So as a result of the financial costs increasing, they had to cancel the tender. I mean, it was a big blow to Turkish energy plans. However, there are still negotiations. Right now, KEPCO is in negotiations with Turkish Ministry of Energy. I have contacted several KEPCO officials. They seem to not share much information right now because of the confidentiality of the process. However, it is possible to state that KEPCO is negotiating with Turkish government officially. On the other hand, 2 days ago, I came to a news in which Rosatom general director was talking about how they can help Turkey to establish a second nuclear power plant. In this regard, it is possible to say that Rosatom, although I haven't seen any official report, it can be stated that Rosatom is also interested in building more power plants in Turkey, because for Akkuyu, it has been going well on their end. So it could be a nice transition for Rosatom to move their resources from one part of Turkey to another. And the Sinop side is very close to the Black Sea. I mean, it is located on the Black Sea side, and it is more closer to Russia. On the other hand, we have many other negotiations regarding SMRs. As far as I know, US companies are in contact with the ministry, and the authority, the Nuclear Regulatory Authority, is considering a regulation on how to regulate SMRs. So there are ongoing projects on company sides and on the legislation sides on SMRs.
That sounds like a very rich and vibrant discussion and negotiations going on over the future of expansion of nuclear energy in Turkey. So thank you for those insights. Since you mentioned that Rosatom is among those interested in expanding their current footprint, I'm curious how the Russian invasion of Ukraine may be impacting the nuclear cooperation between Rosatom and Turkey.
It's a great question. Thank you. I couldn't have enough space in my policy memo to write about it, but I can explain the things that, as I mentioned in my presentation, Rosatom has the 100% of the nuclear shares of the Akkuyu nuclear power plant. So they shoulder all the financial burdens. And when the invasion started, the Russian invasion of Ukraine started, there were a lot of concerns in Turkey. What would happen if there is an international sanction on Rosatom? How could they help? Or how could they finance Akkuyu? So there were huge amount of concerns, and there was even offers that Turkish companies might take up to 49% of the shares so that they could evade sanctions. However, Turkish companies which are working internationally, they didn't want to take the risk. If there is a sanction on Rosatom, they didn't want to be affiliated with Rosatom. So Russian invasion of Ukraine brought some concerns to the Turkish companies. On the other hand, as I replied in my first question, Turkish government might be negotiating with Rosatom for the second nuclear power plant, but I don't believe they will sign any official document until the Russian invasion of Ukraine finishes or there is a solution to invasion, because Turkey does not want to commit itself much into the Russia. I mean, there is a misunderstanding that Turkey is siding with Russia in terms of political terms. However, this is not the case. So I believe that Ankara wouldn't take any more risks that could associate itself with Moscow anymore.
And just as a little follow-on, do you see the conflict impacting, this is broadening out a little bit more regionally, just as we know, there's a sort of regional interest in nuclear energy. And Rosatom is clearly a player in some of those discussions and negotiations. Do you see the Ukraine conflict impacting those other relationships in the region?
Unfortunately, I have to say that the invasion didn't affect much in the region, especially when we look at Egypt. They recently signed a nuclear power project, El Daba project with Rosatom. It was signed after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and as we know from other cooperations, Iran and Russia have been cooperating extensively, especially after the Russian invasion, because of Iran is trying to evade sanctions, Russia needs partners. So in terms of nuclear energy, I don't know, Rosatom has a big plan in Iran. However, in other terms, they have been cooperating closely. And when we look at other parts in the region, as we all know, Syria is the one and only ally in the region for Russia, and we cannot expect them to disagree with Moscow on the invasion. But there is no nuclear energy or nuclear cooperation in Syria. In other parts of the region, there is a concern that if US and Saudi Arabia cannot agree on nuclear energy, Russia might try to take an advantage here and offer some nuclear energy programs, because what Rosatom does good in exporting its technology is that they offer really competitive prices. I mean, in Turkey, it is the first built on and operate project in the world, starting with Turkey, and it goes beyond Turkey. There is one building up in Bangladesh, and the other one is in Egypt. So these can be examples for other countries or other states in the region to get competitive prices. And also in the region, there is a concern of proliferation. So if US or Western companies cannot offer due to the proliferation risks, Russia might just ignore that proliferation risks and go for it because of financial outcomes.
Understood. Yeah, it's a very complex situation.
Yeah.
So sort of switching gears a bit now and going back to one of your themes in your piece. Given Turkey's history of combating terrorism, how does this experience influence the Turkish approach to nuclear security? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, thank you again asking for this question. I wanted to expand this, but I had some other thoughts, so I can go into details now. Unfortunately, Turkey has been fighting international and domestic terrorism for 4 decades. This has given Turkey a huge experience. And the Turkish organizations, institutions, and actors in security measures, they know how to organize, how to be organized, and how to respond to security threats. This gives a huge bonus because there is an awareness. If there is something going on, there is a security problem, Turkish security forces know how to respond. In this case, if there is a nuclear security incident, I hope there will be none, but if there is one, I believe Turkish security force will respond promptly. However, Turkish approach to nuclear security in this regard is preemptive. Rather than focusing on response, Turkey is focusing on deterrence. They are taking every possible measures, and they are working extensively on regulations to strengthen its commitments that there will be no nuclear security incident in Turkey. However, if it happens, there are many ongoing trainings between security forces, between organizations, and there will be trainings with Rosatom security officers. So these all combined gives us as a historical experience that Turkey gained through combating terrorism. And when we look at the Turkish army has superiority in the region. In this regard, it is related to somehow to your previous question. When we look at Russian invasion in terms of nuclear security, it gives us a new threat. State is the main threat for nuclear security right now. So when Turkey state thinks that if there is gonna be an attack from a state actor in the region for its nuclear power plants, I believe that Turkish army superiority in the region makes it highly impossible. And also, it is not needed, but I should remind that Turkey is a NATO country. So this also makes things harder for any other state in the region to attack Turkey or target its nuclear power plants. In terms of nuclear security, it's a huge bonus.
Great. No, thank you very much. Shifting gears a little bit again, we've touched on the role of Russia and Rosatom, but of course there's other players interested in the region in terms of nuclear energy and infrastructure. One of them is China. And curious what insights you might have into how China's nuclear interests in the region affect the nuclear security outlook. And maybe talk a little bit first about where they're interested in.
Thank you again. It's a great question. I forgot to mention it that China is also interested in Turkey's nuclear power program. The third site has been selected, and there were negotiations with China to establish a nuclear power plant in the European side of Turkey. However, the negotiations are, I don't know, there has been no official statement, but there is no concrete steps taken. However, it shows that China is interested in, and we know that in the region, in other parts, China is investing heavily in Iran and in other states. It is not necessarily related to nuclear, but as we all know that it comes as a package. So when you start investing in a state, in the end, if you are interested in nuclear power, China will make sure they take the offer. It might be problematic because nuclear security is something is understood or acknowledged differently in China. I had a chance to speak a Chinese nuclear security expert, and I asked him, okay, in the West and in the Turkey, we have this. Nuclear security is explained. We are working on nuclear security. We are talking about it. And he told me that in China, there are different things. It's about our own culture. Our security culture makes it impossible to talk about security measures. So why should we talk about nuclear security, or why should we think that terrorists can attack nuclear power plants in China? If we are talking about these issues, we are showing them a way. So we don't talk about that, he said. I said, okay, you don't talk about it, but do you have preparation? Do you have measures? He said, of course we have measures, but we don't have security threats as Turkey. We don't have security threats as Europe, or we don't have nuclear security threats as US. In essence, I don't want to paraphrase his words, but he, in a sense, stated that it is not a problem in China. So if we are thinking that China is investing nuclear energy in the Middle East, where there is no strong cooperation between states and there is a continuous conflict in the region, if China invests, China will be bringing its own security culture, which is totally different than what we have seen. So it gives me a little bit concern because of the region, especially because, as I mentioned, in the region there is no cooperation, there is always rivalries, and there is constantly changing cooperation. So now we cannot expect this to be, we don't want nuclear power plants in conflict zones, especially if there is a high possibility.
Absolutely. No, thanks for those. That's very interesting insights that you've gained from your conversations. Thanks for sharing those with us. Just a couple more questions from me before we turn to audience questions. And again, I'm interested more regionally. Do other countries in the region seeking nuclear energy capabilities face similar threats as Turkey does, or similar or different security challenges? Is that something about?
Actually, it is one of the hard questions you ask. I try to answer in a simple manner that there are some certain themes that are common in the region. For example, terrorism is a theme that applies to all states in the region, because we cannot guarantee that there will be no conflict, or there will be no non-state actor attacking nuclear facilities in the region. This is one of the important things that shared in the region. And as we all know that the new nuclear power plants are being digitalized, so there will be more digital nuclear power plants. So if we are expecting new nuclear power plants in the region, cybersecurity will be more important. However, in the region, cybersecurity is not acknowledged as a real threat. So it might be a big problem in the region as general. And the most important concern in the region is that, especially in the Middle East part, is that there is a huge proliferation concern in the region. When we look at Iran, Iraq, Syria, these are the ones who violated NPT. And if nuclear power plants will be here, if we export nuclear technology to these states, maybe the main common concern in the region will be the proliferation risks. And when we look at also the safety culture, it is something, safety and security culture. In the region, there is a different security culture. So these are all common themes that gives concerns. Of course, this doesn't necessarily mean that there shouldn't be no nuclear power plants in the region. On the contrary, I strongly suggest that if enough measures are taken, the region could give enough space and commitments, financial commitments to the nuclear power plants. On the other hand, when we look at the differences in the region, it is clear that in the region, every state has different cooperations. For example, as I mentioned earlier, Syria is closely cooperating with Russia. We can even say that Syria is under strong influence of Russia. When we look at Iran, Iran is also getting under the umbrella of influence of Russia. On the other hand, we have Turkey, which is a NATO ally and which is more Western than any other states in the region. However, when we look at Egypt, we see a changing partnership from US to Russia because they are cooperating strongly with Russia in terms of nuclear energy. And as I said, there is no constant alliances in the region, and constantly changing alliances makes it different for different brings different expectations for nuclear power because they will be cooperating with different nuclear technology providers. And these should be also mentioned that international cooperation and regulatory framework in the region changes a lot, even though some of them has improving their regulations or their capabilities in terms of nuclear security, some others are resistant to nuclear security measures, thinking that it is not their problem. And public perception in the region changes from state to state. There are some states in the region that are pro-nuclear and some others are against nuclear. So these are the, in general, differences in the region. I hope I was able to answer your question because it was really a hard one to answer.
Yeah, no, you've given a very comprehensive and wide-ranging overview of the different levels of concern and issues in the region. So thank you for that. Maybe one last question before I turn over to audience questions. The title of your piece is lessons for other nuclear newcomers. Do you have thoughts about what specifically Turkey can offer to the region or elsewhere in the world in terms of nuclear security lessons learned for other nuclear newcomers?
That's an excellent question again. Thank you, Christina. In terms of Turkey's experience and lessons learned, unfortunately, the IPS mission mentioned that Turkey has a national nuclear security regime based on IAEA's guidance. However, when they recommended some other measures, they didn't share it publicly. I mean, it is the Turkish regulator that didn't share it publicly. So it could be really beneficial if we can have a hand on the paper, the recommendations and the suggestions that IAEA had. But in general, I believe that when we look at from the publicly available information, we can state that Turkey started its nuclear security regime long before its nuclear power plant. So it's an important level. First of all, Turkey started creating a national policy, which could be an example or which is a good way to start the nuclear energy. Other states might benefit from that. And Turkey has a robust regulatory framework, which can share its experience with the regional or other international newcomers. And international cooperation, in terms of international cooperation, Turkey is an example state. Turkey participated in all nuclear security summits. Turkey sends ministerial level of participation to the ICONs and all other relevant international meetings and events. So it could be an example for other states to start joining those international events. And one important aspect that Turkey can be an example is that conflict and emergency preparedness. As Turkey is ready and has developed a robust nuclear security regime and still investing in nuclear security measures, these can be shared. Turkey can arrange training activities for legislation and physical protection, regulation development, All these can be organized in a regional level or international level. I know that every newcomer has different needs, so it should be tailored to the specific needs. However, as Turkey has managed to well integrate its security culture into nuclear security culture, this is a great way to start nuclear security or enhance nuclear security measures, which other states can benefit from Turkish experience.
Great. Thank you so much, Ali. I'm going to turn now to some questions from the audience. We've got a good collection here to keep priming the pump with. So one here, which is, which nation provides the Akkuyu Guard Forces? Akkuyu being the new nuclear plant that was inaugurated in April. To whom are they accountable? And there's a second part to the question, but I'll let you address that first.
Yeah. I don't know who asked this question, but that's a great question. So thank you for asking and bringing this up. Unfortunately, there is no publicly available information who will be the guards inside. However, we can think that as Rosatom is responsible for the protection of the site as the operator, Rosatom is responsible for providing physical and cyber security inside. Outside of parameters is within the jurisdiction of Turkish security forces. So when we look at the Turkish law, it says that only Turkish citizens can have heavy weaponry, which is required to protect Akkuyu. So in this regard, there might be a change in the law allowing a special permission to Rosatom to employ Russian security forces to protect Akkuyu, or Rosatom might use Turkish companies, Turkish special security forces, which are financial, not the military special forces, but security companies. They might use as a subcontractor. But for now, it is not shared with the public. And I have asked this question to the Rosatom itself. I mailed them as a part of my PhD studies. As you may guess, I didn't receive an answer.
Understood. I will say this is a question from George Foster of Amport Risk Limited. And the second part of the question is, you mentioned learning from international guidance. Are there other international examples of a build, own, operate model which has handed off the design, interpretation, application, and operation of nuclear security to a separate international sovereign nation? And if so, what lessons have been learned from that?
Thank you, George, for joining us. It's really nice to have you here. And for your question, again, you always ask hard questions, but I will try to answer. Build, own, and operate model is also being applied in Bangladesh, and it will be implemented in Egypt. However, these are all models taken from Rosatom. So there is only one source providing build, own, and operate model right now in the world, and it is Rosatom. So it is really early to say that there are lessons learned from Rosatom's approach, but I can clearly state that Rosatom's approach is based on financial competitive price, and it comes with other vulnerabilities, weaknesses. So in terms of lessons learned, I could say that when you are going with a foreign investor for 100%, you should also think about the security measures, safety measures, safeguard measures. Even though the Akkuyu will be within the jurisdiction of Turkish authorities, Rosatom has offered to take it into its jurisdiction while it was on the negotiation level. However, Turkey, as expected, couldn't agree in this one, and they said no, Akkuyu will be under Turkish regulatory jurisdiction, and Whatever happens in the Akkuyu, good or bad, will be under the Rosatom's responsibility. However, Rosatom, as the operator, will be responsible for Turkish authorities. In this regard, as I mentioned in my presentation, it is really important that the Nuclear Regulatory Authority is free from political pressure in order to execute its mandate against Rosatom, if necessary to punish or sanction or even revoke its license. However, we have seen that Russia uses its nuclear energy as a tool of coercion from time to time. So this is really important that any political involvement will not happen in management of Akkuyu.
Thank you, Ali, for those answers. I'm going to turn now to a question from Coralie Green from the University of New Hampshire. Has public opinion or support for nuclear energy development in Türkiye shifted since the February 2023 earthquake? And additionally, has the Chernobyl disaster continued to influence public opinion, especially among older generations in Türkiye?
Thank you so much for the great question. I wanted to talk about this. It's really timely. In Turkey, public opinion didn't change since the earthquake because there has been disinformation about the earthquake in Turkey. Because I also came across with some international news and commentaries stating that earthquake has affected the reactor 1. There has been some cracks on the building. However, there are many reports that this is not the case. So in terms of public opinion after the earthquake, there has been no negative change. On the contrary, Turkish authorities made sure that public get the right answer, and there has been no effect on Akkuyu because Akkuyu is being built to resist earthquakes around 9.0 level. So that earthquake was not that high, and Turkish authorities are assuring us that there has been no negative effects on the building due to the earthquake. And when we look at the effects of Chernobyl disaster, yes, it had a profound effect on Turkish attempts to achieve nuclear energy during the 80s, which was the reason that Turkey couldn't build a nuclear power plant in the 90s because of the public opinion. However, increasing Turkish energy demands make it possible, and the current government is making nuclear energy as a symbol of modernity. So people started to associate nuclear energy with modernity. So I can clearly say that in Turkey there is, I don't know, there is an official study or not, but I can say that there are around 80 or 90% public support for the Akkuyu, which will give Turkey a unique nuclear power capability.
Thanks, Ali. Turning now to a question from Nick Roth at NTI. Thank you for your great talk. You mentioned Turkey's scores in NTI's Nuclear Security Index, and you noted that Turkey's important progress on nuclear security in the most recent index, particularly with regard to voluntary commitments. One area where Turkey could still increase its index score is high-level participation in IAEA nuclear security ministerials. Do you hope that Turkey will send a minister to next year's IAEA International Conference on Nuclear Security, and why?
Thank you, Nick. I didn't get a confirmation, but I talked to my friends in different ministries and different organizations. I believe that Turkey, as a newcomer state that has inaugurated its nuclear power plant, will definitely join and send a ministerial delegation to the ICONs and IAEA nuclear security events, because Turkey wants to show that we are also in the league. And we have our responsibilities, and we are making sure that these responsibilities are reflected in our commitments and in our legislations and in our practices. So in this regard, I really hope and I strongly believe that Turkey will be represented at a high level from now on as a nuclear newcomer, and I believe Turkey will try to give other states who are thinking nuclear energy programs advice, or Turkey will offer advice to other states who are trying to get nuclear power.
Thanks so much. I think we have time for maybe one more question. We'll see. This one is from Ralph Burkhardt, who mentions that you wrote an excellent article in October last year called Nuclear Security During Armed Conflict, Recommendations Toward a Strengthened International Framework to Address Nuclear Security Challenges During Hostilities. Do you think Turkey could be interested in strengthening the current norms by supporting the establishment of a new multilateral tool, such as a convention prohibiting any attack against a civil nuclear installation?
Thank you so much for the kind words, and I hope one of you can share. I have written an extensive report based on my Stimson paper for the EU Consortium MPDC. If you can share the link, it is much more detailed, and what steps could be taken is more detailed in that report. And in regards to Turkey, my PhD topic will be around the armed conflict and nuclear security. I will be writing a dissertation. This is the first time that I share it with anyone else. I had it in my mind, but thanks to Stimson Center's great event, I wanted to share this information as well. And I will be more focusing on the armed conflict and nuclear security. However, in terms of new convention or new initiative, I believe there is a need for a new tools to implement it, but it might be at the level of IAEA, which we could empower IAEA to send more missions or have in safety and security zones around the conflicted areas. However, a new convention is really hard to achieve because of the polarization of the world due to the political concerns, political polarities in the world. So I don't think Turkey could initiate or support something in this regard, because otherwise, if Turkey is spearheading such a convention, it could be interpreted in Moscow that Turkey is trying to do something against Moscow. So considering the sensitivities, currently I don't believe Turkey is willing to take that leading role in anything like this. However, I strongly believe that after the Russian invasion of Ukraine ends, there is a lessons learned from the Russian occupation of the Ukrainian nuclear power plants. It showed that the threat perception is changing. It used to be a non-state actors, especially after the 9/11 attacks. However, when we look at the main source of the threat, it is now state. And it is beyond design-based threat documents, and it should be addressed because there are many international legal gaps in terms of prohibiting armed attacks against nuclear facilities, which need to be addressed after the international community is ready.
I'm going to try and squeeze in, we're right at time, but I'm going to try and squeeze in at least one more question. This is from Egemen Aras at North Carolina State University. You identified risk and challenges most related to politics, but how about technical challenges? Does Turkey have enough technical capacity to detect illicit nuclear activities? If yes, what capabilities does it have? And if no, what actions does Turkey need to take?
Thank you again for the great question. I mean, Turkey has been cooperating with the IAEA and is a part of a database that IAEA runs. So, and Turkey has been cooperating with Interpol in this regard, with IAEA, with other international actors. There has been training activities with Bulgaria and Georgian officials, which is the main route from. Turkey is a transit state, but the smuggling occurs from or to Georgia and to Bulgaria. So in this case, Turkish and Bulgarian and Georgian security forces have been training a lot in this regard, and there have been several cases that Turkish police officers have taken control of smuggling, and they stopped many other smuggling operations, including highly enriched uranium. I don't know the details because these are disclosed reports. However, I know that there is a huge cooperation, as it is known that there is a transit route in the region.
Thanks so much, Ali. I think we're right at time, and I want to be respectful of your time. You've been so generous with your knowledge and insights. And I hope everybody online learned as much and enjoyed this as much as I did for this great deep dive into Turkey's nuclear future and future of nuclear security in Türkiye and the region. So thanks again to you for being with us today and presenting your piece, and for taking all our questions. And thanks to all those who are able to join us online.
And I thank you for Stimson Center and all the heroes that are behind the scenes for organizing such a great event. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Ali. Take care, everyone.